Good evening and welcome to Moreland City Council's October Council meeting. My name is Councillor Megan Hopper, Mayor of the City of Moreland. In recognising the cultural diversity of our great city, I'd like to begin by paying my respects to the local Indigenous people of Moreland by acknowledging that we are meeting tonight on the traditional tribal lands of the Wurundjeri people. And I offer my respects to the Wurundjeri elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including any that might be joining us here this evening. Members of the gallery, please note that Council's meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's website this evening. This recording will also be made available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised that they may be recorded during the meeting. Councillors, just as a reminder that in line with the adopted councillor conduct principles, as outlined in the Councillor Code of Conduct, councillors should ensure that they conduct themselves in the meeting with integrity, impartially exercise their responsibilities in the interest of the local community, and not improperly seek to confer or advantage any person. With us tonight we have Councillor Sue Bolton, Councillor Lita Gillies, Councillor John Kavanagh, Councillor Samantha Ratnam, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Helen Davidson, Councillor Lambros Tapanos, Councillor Linka Thompson, Councillor Rob Thompson and Councillor Oscar Yildiz. We also have a number of officers in attendance this evening, our Chief Executive Officer Narina Di Lorenzo, the Director of Corporate Services James Scott, Director of City Infrastructure Grant Thorne, the Director of Planning and Economic Development Kirsten Costa, the Acting Director of Social Development Barry Hahn, our Manager of Governance Lydia Harding and the Executive Assistant to Mayor and Councillors Monica Bucurelli. Councillors, I've received an apology for Councillor Michael Teddy. Could I please have a motion to move that? Moved by Councillor Gillies. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Yildiz. I assume there's no other apologies as everybody else is here, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Any disclosures of interest or conflict of interest for this evening's meeting?
Yes, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on the East Brunswick parking arrangements report as it affects my residential amenity.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ratnam. East Brunswick. Could I please have a motion for the adoption of the minutes from the meetings held on the 9th of September and the 21st of September?
Can I move with a very slight amendment? Just bottom of page 3, when it refers to Mr Paul McKay, it says from Brunswick. I can guarantee Paul McKay lives in Pascoe Vale,
okay.
And so if we would change that place.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a seconder with that amendment? Seconded Councillor Davidson. Is there any further discussion? No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Are there any petitions that members of the gallery or councillors wish to present this evening? I'll take councillors first. No.
Oh, sorry, it's this one.
Yes, okay. Well, in that case, I'll take it from the gallery. Please step forward and just outline what the petition is in regard to and the number of signatures.
Yes, Michael Hamilgreen, Coburg resident. The petition is in relation to public toilets. It's a cause where we call on the Moreland Council to increase the number of public toilets in Coburg and improve the frequency of cleaning. The petition is a hard copy, one collected around the Coburg Shopping Centre, 380 signatures at this point. There is another petition which another fellow resident will be presenting. That's the online version of the similar call. So the petition arises out of the sense that the public toilets in Coburg are totally inadequate. People with medical problems, people with small children, pregnant women, older people finding it difficult to access public toilets in a timely way. The major problems we're seeing and that generated this petition, there aren't enough toilets at the Coburg shops, and that leads to pressures on other toilets, particularly in the library. Around 4 years ago, there was 3 previous multi-user public toilets, 2 women's and 1 men's, with some 5 separate cubicles, plus a multi-user men's urinal. The council replaced these 5 cubicles and multi-user urinal with just 2 unisex Exolute cubicles, 1 in Waterfield Street and 1 in Victoria Mall. The rapid increase in the number of people using the Coburg Shopping Centre due to new large-scale housing and apartment developments in the Pentridge Estate and around Coburg means that the users of the Coburg Shopping Centre has dramatically increased 2 or 3-fold. Over the same 4-year period, Far from planning for increased usage, the council has dramatically reduced public toilet access from approximately, by fourfold, approximately 8 users at any one time to 2 users at any one time. Further increase in the use of Coburg Shopping Centre will come from the new large-scale apartment blocks currently being built on Bell Street and Pentridge. The lack of access has been causing great discomfort and distress for many people going to the centre, so much so that people have sometimes stopped going to Coburg shops because of the lack of toilets. Many women don't like sharing public toilets with men, so we've moved from a situation of separate toilets for men and women to unisex toilets. This is for the very obvious reason that once you have men using unisex toilets without a separate urinal, many fail to raise the toilet seat before urinating, with consequent splashing and contamination. Even within an hour of cleaning, a unisex toilet may and generally does become dirty and smelly again. Surveys by other councils have found that women overwhelmingly prefer women's-only toilets for very good cleanliness, hygiene and infection prevention reasons. Yet the council, as I understand it, did not consult women residents about this move from separate toilets to unisex ones. Given the very heavy continuous usage of the Exclude toilets, the once-a-day cleaning and maintenance is too infrequent and totally inadequate. Last year there were maintenance problems where doors were refusing to close and one of the toilets lacked a toilet seat for almost 6 months. So the required council action, in the view of many of those who have signed this petition, is an immediate interim increase in public toilet access at Coburg through reopening the existing separate multi-user toilets for men and women that were closed. They're still there. And then also increase cleaning of the single-user toilets on at least a 2-hourly basis. In the longer term, we see a need for a proper public toilet block at Coburg Shopping Centre with separate men's, women's, unisex and disabled access areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr Hamilgreen. Did you want to hand forward that petition?
Sorry, who did it?
Thank you.
380 signatures.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Okay, are there any further petitions in the gallery? Yes, please come forward.
I take it I can speak in question time about mine? Is that
we don't normally actually allow speeches. I did allow that one. So normally you just ask the question and maybe provide a little bit of information around the question that you're asking.
I'll do that in question time. Yeah, I'm presenting a petition on the same topic. This is an online one through the petition site entitled Moreland City Council, Stop Expecting People to Hold It and Install More Toilets in Coburg Now. It has 62 supporters. It's only been up 2 weeks. And it has over 150 shares on Facebook. And I'd also like to say that it is supported by the Coburg Traders Association.
Okay, wonderful.
Who are very keen to get more toilets.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, any further petitions? No? Okay. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is reports from committee to council. Somebody to move and second the Glenroy Advisory Group minutes. Moved Councillor Gillies, seconded Councillor Davidson. Is there any discussion? I'll put them to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. And Family and Children's Services Advisory Committee, moved Councillor Rob Thompson, seconded Councillor Gillies. Is there any discussion? No? I'll put those to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We now move to question time. Question time is an opportunity for 30 minutes for citizens of Moreland to raise questions with councillors. Please note that if your question relates to a matter on any of the officer reports, this is the time to raise that question with council. You won't have an opportunity to ask questions or speak once we enter formal debate. A maximum of 2 questions is allowed per person, and a maximum of 3 questions will be heard on any one subject. Council will then proceed to the next subject, returning to the previous subject if time permits. If your question cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and responded to between now and the next council meeting. If a response to your question is provided at tonight's meeting, then no further action will be taken. We have 30 minutes and we want to make sure that we hear all of the questions. So I ask that we don't, I feel like I've been speaking for 30 minutes, so I ask that we don't enter into debate during this time. And if we need to, we can have a more detailed discussion outside of this forum. Also, councillors, I'll be only accepting one answer to each question from either one councillor or one officer, and we should try to address each question succinctly. I feel like that gets longer for a council meeting. The first question is from Claire Perry, manager of the Sydney Road Brunswick Association, in relation to the Black Street car park report.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Claire from the Sydney Road Brunswick Association, representing the businesses in Sydney Road Brunswick, 540 operating businesses. It's in regards to the sale of the encroaching wall at the Black Street car park. We made a submission and we also went to the urban planning meeting and spoke on that. In the executive summary notes that the association has seen, we don't object to the sale of this particular crumbling wall, as you well know. We understand the council, the reasons for the sale of this wall. However, this wall is situated on the land that was initiated and paid for by the businesses in this area via the special levy, which I'm sure you're all very well aware of, for 15 years for a car park. As requested in our emails and our submission and the following talk on the urban planning meeting, we believe that the proceeds collected from this very car park should go back to the car park or car parking off Sydney Road for which it was purchased. We object to the recommendation to put the collection of the money to housing reserve. We note that this recommendation, number 4, that the proceeds will go to the housing reserve. I'm sorry, I don't know what that exactly means, and maybe that has been put there several months ago, but we object to those funds being put to that. How can council approve redirecting these funds elsewhere, considering the SRBA has alerted council to this obligation, and where council have acknowledged a moral and ethical obligation to those businesses who paid for the purchase of that land via the levy, and you have recognised that there is an urgent need for better signage to off-street car parks in Sydney Road, and there's been no funds allocated and there's no current funds, and we would still like to stress that we would like those funds reallocated back to the car park from whence they came and those people. So is council still considering redirecting those funds to housing reserve?
Okay, thank you, Claire. So the motion that's been put before us by officers does recommend that we allocate those funds to housing reserve. So I guess councillors will take on board your advocacy on behalf of the Sydney Road Brunswick Association and consider whether they wish to put forward an amendment to what has been put forward as the recommendation. In relation to your suggestion that the money go into illuminated signage instead, I would point out that it would only go a very small way towards covering the cost of what we've estimated that signage would cost. But certainly I take on board the suggestion.
Can I just say
to that?
Okay.
Just want to add something briefly to that. So you asked a question about the housing reserve. So that's a reserve that we've established to sort of generate funds or pool funds to help us build social and affordable housing or contribute to more social and affordable housing in the municipality. And the rationale there is that we've been thinking about the Black Street car parking for a potential airspace project, social housing project, as you'd be aware of, and we're working through that with our airspace feasibility study, and there's lots of steps to come. But also just in relation to the matter about where the funds get redistributed to, I believe the rationale for the recommendation that they go to the housing reserve, one, because Black Street Car Park has been talked about in terms of social and affordable housing, but also that the land that's being sold actually doesn't impact on the car park in terms of providing less or more car parking. So in some ways it's inconsequential to the broader capacity of that car park, and therefore that's the rationale that's been provided to put that money into the housing reserve, given the link between Black Street Car Parking and our broader goals with social and affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And just can I ask one more question?
Sure.
The association is not as supportive of the illuminated parking signs, by the way.
Oh, okay. You just
so
more
we've never
parking
asked
signs.
for illuminated. We feel that that's totally unaffordable.
Right.
So
okay.
council
Just
rethink that.
more
But
parking signs.
But also, is council going to consult with the Sydney Road Association on the above space concept feasibility study that is being undertaken? Because we would appreciate being consulted apart, being the car parks that we first asked to be built there. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, certainly if the project moves forward, then consultation would be
Okay,
a strong
great.
part of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. The next question is from Michael Hamill-Green in relation to public toilets.
Yes, thank you. I'll just state my question because I did put the reasons behind the thinking in the previous petition that I advanced before. So my question is this. What is the council's proposal for putting in place A, immediate interim measures to address the public toilet access crisis at Coburg Shopping Centre, and B, more permanent arrangements for adequate and appropriate public toilet access for women, men, older age groups, people with disabilities and people who are transgender in order to ensure reasonable access for both current levels and projected increases in numbers of people visiting the shopping centre.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll direct it to our Director of City Infrastructure and just ask him to give an overview of what the toilet strategy plans for Coburg in the next couple of years.
Through the Mayor, thank you for your question. There is a notice of motion tonight which reconsiders the public toilet strategy and the capital works program that's within that. There's also a resolution from the 26th of June 2015 meeting that is to reconsider that capital program as well before the development of the 16-17 budget. So Council will be presented with a program to go forward with toilets. At this stage I can't say whether there's more toilets, where they'll be, etc. within Coburg until that plan is developed and presented to Council, which will occur before the development and adoption of the 16-17 budget.
With respect, that's answering section B of my question, but not answering section A, which was the immediate interim measures to address the public toilet access crisis at Coburg Shopping Centre. You were talking about the longer-term strategy, but my question involved both aspects of the immediate interim needs as well as the longer-term ones.
So I think Council hasn't identified a crisis in public toilet usage in Coburg, so we don't currently have a proposal for immediate response to the crisis that we have not identified, would be my answer to your question. Councillor Bolton?
Just on that, I'd like to, well, it's partly a question rather than an answer, and including a possible temporary solution which hasn't been raised on Council yet. And perhaps the Director of Infrastructure might be able to provide more information. It has been raised with me the possibility of opening up the public toilets that exist beside the Coburg Library meeting room, which, currently the doors are always locked unless there's an actual meeting or function in the library, and that could be one possible temporary solution. Another possible temporary solution would be reopening the toilet block at the back of Coles, which obviously isn't disability accessible, but it would help with the overflow, and that would be, as long as there was appropriate signage indicating it wasn't, this was an extra additional toilet block, that would help with relieve the pressure on the Coburg Library, single disability toilets where, a lot of people in wheelchairs who need to use those toilets can't get in because there's a queue of able-bodied people outside the toilets. So I'd like to raise, I don't know if this has been raised before as in terms of temporary solutions, but anyway, it's something to think about.
We discussed the ones that are at the back of Coles as part of our discussion at our briefing on Monday night, and as I understand it, there were very strong sort of safety reasons behind closing those toilets in terms of access and amenity and the condition that they were in. But the library ones that are only open for events isn't something that was raised, so that's certainly something we can take on board and report back on at a future time.
Could I point out that the petition I presented before was from people who do perceive a crisis. So it may be that the Council hasn't done any recent surveys of whether people perceive a crisis, but the whole point of putting this petition is that people are perceiving a crisis. This is a petition that's gathered almost over 400, coupled with the online one, in the space of just 3 weeks, and practically everyone signing it is seeing a crisis.
Okay. Thank you for your question. The next question is from Karina Jang.
All right, same topic. All right, so everybody knows, or they should know, that women need to go to the toilet more than men. Women also take longer to go, and we like to sit down when we go. It's pretty basic. We also have women who experience problems after childbirth, needing access to toilets really quickly. We have pregnant ladies who have to go when they need to go. We have children who are usually the main caregivers with little children who need to take their children somewhere. Most of the women I have spoken to will not use those automated exo-loo ones. They think they are vile. I think they are disgusting. I took some actual photos of the state of the toilets today. Be happy to share them with you. Unfortunately, I didn't get a sample of the air quality. It's absolutely disgusting, and I'm not surprised that women don't want to use it. So basically, in the whole of the Coburg shopping area, you only have the Coburg Library servicing an entire community. So my question is, does council realise that it's actually discriminating against women on this issue? And I was also going to say, why don't you open up the meeting room toilets to women to address this urgent need?
Okay. Thank you for your question. So, as I understand it, this was put in place to move towards exo-loos as our preferred sort of use of toilet a number of years ago as part of our toilet strategy, but it often varies depending on the space. I certainly take on board your comments in relation to what women's preferences might be in relation to the toilets that they use, and I guess that's something that we can take as a suggestion when we consider our next public toilet strategy.
They're not clean. They're just not clean. Most women won't use them. For a start, they're supposed to be self-cleaning, but they're absolutely not. And when you walk in the toilet, the seat, if you're lucky to have it down, it's wet.
Sure.
I've walked into those things and seen faeces everywhere.
Okay.
Friends of mine have walked into places like that and seen blood everywhere. I don't think council is making appropriate use of funding by bothering with these things. What we want is nice, decent, clean toilets that are accessible to everybody. And certainly we shouldn't be, seeking to have unisex toilets everywhere, because a lot of women don't like to use unisex toilets. And I think you really need to consider that.
Okay.
There is a crisis. There absolutely is a crisis, and I really wish Moreland Council would do something about it.
All right. Thank you for your question and submission. The final question tonight is from Mark Towler in relation to the notice of motion on work for the dole.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My hastily written question, I apologise for the writing, and referred to Tony Abbott, not, what's his name, Malcolm Turnbull, sorry.
Yes, it's confusing, it's hard to keep up.
Oh, well, next week there'll be another one, we hope. Sorry. The prospect of work for the dole being taken up by any reputable organisation should be opposed, in my opinion. I'm the Treasurer of the Australian Unemployment Union. I'm also a member of the Dole Action Group. I'm also unemployed and old aged and homeless. Between all those things, the prospect of having to work for the dole is confronting and daunting to anyone. But evidence is very clear to us, both in the union and the action group, that these programs are both generally bogus, illegitimate, inappropriate, unsafe, provide no skilled outcomes, and in fact are a way to reduce people to a level of slavery and serfdom, which is unpaid work by definition. So my question to the council is in two parts, and I'll reverse the order if I may. Firstly, has the council been approached about taking up work for the dole options by any job service agency? And secondly, in light of both my opinion and those of the organisations with which I am, and evidence that's now abroad in the community, will the council commit to not taking up work for the dole now or in the future? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Look, in answer to your first question, as I understand it, there's no proposal before council to participate in the work for the dole scheme at present. In relation to your second question, there is obviously a councillor item coming before us later this evening, and I expect there will be robust debate around that item where we will discuss whether to support it. Ultimately, our employment practices are an organisational matter, and so really the level to which councillors can get involved in those decision-making processes is rightly quite limited, but I imagine that will be discussed in the debate later this evening.
Could I ask one very quick supplementary? Should the operational staff take up and offer to or take up work for the dole, could they clarify what the health and safety requirements and obligations are on people participating, should that occur?
Yeah, I'm happy. The CEO's indicated she's happy to answer that. So.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, just from an operational perspective, a program similar to this was taken up in, I think, 2009. It was attempted at the time. At the time, we found it didn't suit needs. It just, for us, was not working at that point. We don't have any proposals before us. What we've got instead is we expanded our work experience policy and the sorts of things that we do with work experience.
That's at school age.
That's right. So we have gone down a different path since then. So I'm just letting you know there isn't any plans at this point to do that. So,
okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Now I wanted to check whether there were any late submitted questions. Okay, wonderful. In that case, if there's not, we'll move to reports by Mayor and councillors. Does anyone have any reports that they wish to make? I was going to make a very brief report, and I'm sorry, I'm just bringing up the information, so I apologise. Just to note that two either residents of Moreland or previous long-term residents of Moreland were recipients in the recent Victorian Senior Citizens of the Year Awards that were granted last week as part of Senior Citizens Week. One of them was Betty Burgess of Pascoe Vale. She received Council on the Ageing Senior Achiever Award in relation to her tireless contribution over many years to the Country Women's Association in Pascoe Vale and her long-time service to the community. And the Premier's Award for Victorian Senior Citizen of the Year was given to Peter Hopper, who I should note is my uncle, and who spent most of his life in Pascoe Vale and Glenroy and was the principal of Pascoe Vale South Primary School. So just noting both of those achievements. Any further reports? Yes, Councillor Bolton.
I'd like to make one, given that you mentioned this, I just think it would be, I think Council we should pay our respects to the family of the man who went missing and subsequently died in Fawkner, Talha Wahab. Actually, there was a huge community response, particularly from Fawkner, particularly Muslim community, but also non-Muslim community as well, to search for Talha. I mean, the family's in an extremely difficult situation with the devastation of not knowing what had happened to Tanzil's husband. His parents and parents-in-law came urgently from Pakistan, but also Tanzil's in a very difficult situation now, in terms of accessing income and support in Australia at the moment. So this is a really struggling family, and I just really think the council should pay its respects and but also pay tribute to the massive community response to that grouped around to help support this family, particularly the Muslim family, Muslim community in Fawkner. It was truly inspirational and will be a comfort to the family at this particular point in time.
Well, thank you, Councillor Bolton. I think that's very appropriate and thank you very much for raising it. It's certainly very sad news that we received on the weekend, but you're absolutely correct in saying how enormous the community response to that was, which is very heartening. Are there any further reports or items for noting? No? In that case, we'll move on to presentation of officer reports. We'll start with corporate services. DCS 7915, Assembly of Councillors record. Somebody to move, please. Moved Councillor Rob Thompson. Somebody to second. Seconded Councillor Gillies. Yes, Councillor Ratnam.
I'd just like to ask a question of the Mayor regarding Councillor Teddy, the note in the report about Councillor Teddy's lack of attendance without apology for 100% of the meetings in the preceding month. And I know this is probably the fourth time in a row where, since we've begun keeping these records according to the amended Code of Conduct, and I believe Councillor Teddy has complied with the Code of Conduct in speaking to those absences in terms of why there was no apology for those absences. Once out of those 4 or 5 times, I'll stand to be correct on the number of times there. I just wanted to note, I wanted to ask what action can and will the Mayor take regarding this sort of non-compliance and asking for a response from Councillor Teddy, given that he's not here.
I'm happy to take direction from the Director for Corporate Services, who oversees governance. My understanding is that the only, all that we put in the Code of Conduct in relation to this was the opportunity to ask before a council meeting for a response. I don't imagine his response will change very much from time to time from what he gave last time. But yeah, I'm happy to direct it to either the CEO's gesturing or the Director of Corporate Services.
Just through the Mayor, and I will also, if there's some additional detail, it could also be filled in. But at this point, there had been some previous discussion around what are the further recourses for action. One of the recourses was really around then declaring a dispute, which then would go through a dispute resolution process. So the first step was seek the explanation. That was undertaken, and then it is the choice of councillors at that point to determine if they would like to move into dispute. And then there's a dispute resolution process that has a number of steps. So that's what's available to any councillor at this point. If there's any additional detail, that's basically it. Yeah, so that's basically the recourse at this point. And that could be done between council meetings. It doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily an item of business at the council meeting.
Just one follow-up question. Is it possible, is it an option to actually, the Mayor to send a letter to Councillor Teddy asking for him to provide an explanation for those absences as a step before a dispute resolution procedure, if that's the only available recourse?
Certainly, I'm happy to undertake to write to him and ask him to provide an explanation prior to any dispute process being entered into. Okay. Thank you. Is there any further discussion in relation to the Assembly of Councillors record? No. No, if not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. DCS 8015, review of Council's advisory committees. Moved Councillor Rob Thompson. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Gillies. Councillor Thompson, did you wish to speak to it?
Just noting on point 2 of the recommendation that Council support the Australian Local Government Association call for the Commonwealth Financial Assistance Grants indexation to be restored immediately and for the federal government to consider the adequacy of the quantum of financial assistance grants and the indexation methodology in the future.
This one, next.
Yes,
Advisory committees.
This is the report on advisory committees, Councillor
I
Thompson.
apologise, I was rushing ahead.
It's okay. We're all very excited about financial assistance grants. Thank you for your enthusiasm, Councillor Thompson. Did you have anything to say about Council's advisory committees? No. It's okay, Councillor Gillies? No. I'll take amendments first of all.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Lincoln Thompson.
I have an amendment to point 2. It was circulated with later today.
Yes.
About an amendment to the principles and framework. So it's just to alter dot 2.2 to adopt the amended principles and framework. And also with the inclusion of the external committees at the Metropolitan Transport Forum be included, and also the, is that my one? And the MAV Environment Committee, and also that amendment be made to the Moreland Energy Foundation item to say that a councillor is representative in that board. Moment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is that amendment amenable to the mover and seconder, or would you like me to move it separately?
Why not?
Councillor Rob Thompson?
Yes.
It was sent via email.
Okay.
We all saw it.
Wonderful. Well, in that case, given it's amenable to both the mover and seconder, I'm happy to take it as part of the substantive motion without voting on it separately. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yeah, I just want to speak on the motion.
Amendments.
I got an amendment.
Oh, sorry. Councillor
So just one further amendment, and I've got one question in terms of procedure. So to add an amendment, so maybe it's a subsequent resolution, that we amend the table in the principles section such that the reporting requirements for all committees, except external ones, should be minutes and assemblies of councillor record as required that come to a council meeting. And I'm happy to speak to that briefly if I've got a seconder.
Okay. Is there a seconder to the amendment? Seconded Councillor Lincoln Thompson. Councillor Ratnam.
So this is a slight amendment to what's already there. So there's a section in reporting requirements. There's a table outlining all the different types of committees that we're now sort of developing, or the different categories of committees and reporting requirements according to each. I note that in this table we're also talking about internal committees, so internal committees to council, where it might include councillors and staff members, as well as advisory committees that combine both community and council, and external committees which are external to council. while the practice is for minutes to come to council meetings, I believe that for the sake of transparency and accountability, all the meetings there, the minutes should come to council meetings. It helps us keep abreast of what's happening. I know there's sensitive information, but I know we've been able to treat that in terms of the way we minute things as well. So just like that amendment, and I was advised that it's actually the practice that those minutes come to council meetings, but I know that the internal committees, for example, that would be a change in the way we practice. So,
Yep.
and just another question on the process. So I know that there were some discussions about slight amendments, and there was a revised version of that document circulated to councillors prior to the meeting. Just how are we going to note that in the resolution, given that the agenda is now superseded by, the agenda documents are superseded by what was circulated to councillors? Do we have to actually note it in the resolutions that there's an updated document with and do we have to outline all the changes that we've made in the document relative to the agenda?
Oh, okay.
My
yeah.
amendment.
Excellent.
My amendment.
Yep. Through the Mayor, the updated document will be attached to the minutes, so that's how that will be taken care of.
So should we note in the resolution that an updated document,
Well,
updated to the agenda version? I'm just thinking about the transparency of the public having seen one version, we're adopting another version, but we're not outlining all the changes we've made to it, which we'd normally do. So just how we get around that.
Detailed as amendment 1, as attachment 1.
Yep. Through the Mayor.
Okay. All right.
You can add that to add some description if you wish. It's not necessary, however, if you want to make it really clear, no problem.
That's fine. If it passes the...
Yeah. Okay. Is there any further debate on Councillor Ratnam's amendment? No? If not, I'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. We'll return to the substantive. I'll take Councillor Kavanagh first and then come back to you, Councillor Thompson.
Just simply to say that it's related to the advisory committees, that it was really wonderful to see them recognised last Thursday evening at the awards night. It was wonderful to see the contribution that they made to our community, and it was recognised for the first time at the time I've been on council. I'm not sure which councillor came up with that idea, but whoever it was, well done. I know it wasn't me, but well done to the person who did, because it was fitting.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Lenker-Thompson.
I just wanted to clarify with my amendment, I had an inclusion of the Moreland and the Metropolitan Transport Forum as a committee that needed to be added as well. I just note it's not up on the... Okay.
Okay, wonderful. It's all under control. I've got it all on board back there. Any further discussion on this item? Yes, Councillor Ratnam.
Just note in the report, I too would like to commend the report. As we spoke about it when the draft was put up, I think a little while ago, this has been the result of quite an extensive piece of work that Council has undertaken over the last year or 2 years, actually, in line with the community plan, community vision being developed, really trying to look at the committees that we have, because they're such an important mechanism of consulting the community and community participation in the work of council. And every now and then, it's a really good idea to have to review it in terms of what's working well, what could be improved. And this piece of work is a culmination of that thinking and work. And it's now an alignment with our new community plan, community vision for 2025. And I think will really carry some good stead in terms of genuine community participation and consultation into the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Any further comment? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? Declare that carried. DCS 8115 Financial Management Report. Yes, Councillor Rob Thompson. Is there a seconder?
I'm almost scared.
Seconded Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Rob Thompson.
I just point out recommendation point 2 that I've already read out.
Would you like to expand upon it in more flowery prose this time? Or?
No, just that Elga has asked us to make that recommendation, and I wholeheartedly support it and hope that Council will as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is there any debate around this item? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. DCS 8215 Adoption of the Moreland City Council Fossil Fuel Divestment Strategy. Moved Councillor Gillies. Somebody second? Seconded Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Gillies, did you wish to speak to that?
No, I'm fine.
Councillor Ratnam?
Can I move an amendment now that I've proposed it? Seconded it?
Can't do that, unfortunately.
I might have to withdraw my seconding.
Okay,
Or Councillor Lenker-Thompson can move my amendment to the... Yes.
Or Councillor Lenker-Thompson, would you prefer to second it or move Councillor Ratnam's amendment?
I've got an amendment.
I've got an amendment as well.
She has her own amendment.
I've got
Councillor
an
Bolton
amendment
has an
as well.
amendment. Goodness, we won't recognise this report by the end of it. She will also move your amendment, so we'll keep you as the seconder. Do you wish to speak to it as the seconder?
I might speak in closing, given that we've got a couple of amendments. if
No
that's all right.
worries. Councillor Lenker-Thompson, your amendments.
Yes, I have one amendment to include recommendation 3, that a copy of the fossil fuel divestment strategy be forwarded to MAV member councils, and also that to add the following to the end of resolution 1, subject to changing the purpose of section 2 of the strategy to read, Moreland City Council is concerned about the impact of the fossil fuel industry on greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, Council recognises the role of financial institutions in financing new fossil fuel projects in Australia. This strategy will guide how Council invests its funds to ensure that it does not support the fossil fuel industry directly and influences investment by financial institutions away from the fossil fuel industry. This strategy applies across Moreland City Council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lenker-Thompson. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Seconded, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Thompson.
Just quickly, that the First Amendment is a show of just how interested other councils are with this particular strategy. That it's a leading strategy. Certainly shows a new way in which we can tackle fossil fuel industries and reduce our carbon emissions. I'm the representative on the MAV Environment Committee, so they were very interested to know, so they wanted a copy of the strategy. And in speaking to the amendment from Councillor Ratnam, it's just in terms of bringing a broader context to a more holistic context to the introduction of the strategy itself.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate on these amendments? No? If not, I'll put them to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried and it forms part of the substantive motion. Councillor Bolton.
Amendment. Now, my amendment is to insert an extra point after point 1 and to renumber the subsequent points. And the point I want to insert is that as part of the annual reviews of the fossil fuel divestment strategy, an analysis be done to see if it is feasible to move to using a negative screening approach, including recommendations of a time frame for doing so.
Okay, is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded, Councillor Lenker-Thompson. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm very excited that Council is discussing the final phase, which hopefully it will get voted on for fossil fuel divestment. But I advocated at the time when we adopted the draft strategy that went out to consultation that the Council adopt a negative screening approach. And my understanding at the time is Council officers' recommendation was that some of the banks and financial institutions that don't invest in fossil fuel don't provide all of the range of services that Council requires. But that, of course, may change in the future. And I think it is far better to use as an approach, if it's feasible, to use a negative screening approach, i.e. to indicate to the fossil fuel banks that we'll withdraw your contracts rather than just rewarding some good practices. I think it sends a much stronger message, and I think the world is at an absolute crisis at the moment, and including in Australia, and I just think urgent action needs to be taken. So I'd the part of the strategy is that it come up for an annual review. We review how it's going each year. So I think as part of that, because the council officers are very familiar with what the various institutions are providing, I think it shouldn't be an onerous task to see if it's feasible to move as part of that review to a negative screening approach.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bolton. Any further debate on this amendment?
In favour of the amendment?
Yes,
I'd just like to speak in favour of this amendment because given the conversations we've been having at Council about this strategy and particularly when the draft strategy came to us in terms of the negative and positive screening approaches and some concern that the positive screening approaches weren't strong enough and what things could be done to move us to a negative screening approach, I think this approach actually is really measured and gives us a way forward in terms of keeping that on the horizon as a goal to work towards, but giving us something to work with as a starting point. So I think it's actually a really good strategic approach forward to keep everything on the table.
Great, thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Kavanagh.
Can I ask the Director his views on this amendment?
Certainly. To the Director for Corporate Services.
Through the Mayor. Certainly the fact that we will do an analysis means that we've got time. The issue, as Councillor Bolton noted, is the market is, and the parties we would need to use for banking, in particular transactional banking, are not in a position, the ones that are fossil free are not capable of dealing with all of our transactional needs. We understand, Council will hope that that situation will change into the future. The issue is we have a contract for the next 3 years, or close to 2 years left of a 3-year contract. That the issue is if we were to walk away from that before the end of the contract. So I just note that, and there are, so we can analyse it on an annual basis and look at that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor
Can I ask
Kavanagh?
one more question? Would you envisage that we would be walking away from a contract with this, or just putting them on notice, basically?
I reply to that.
Yeah.
What I've, in the amendment, the last little bit, including recommendations of a time frame for doing so. So obviously, you could take all of that into account. So,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I'd suggest that, I mean, this is calling for an analysis to be done to see if it is feasible. If the motion was saying that every time we did an annual review, we move to a negative screening approach, then that would be something that I would find very problematic. But given that it's calling for an analysis to be done to see if it's feasible, it can easily come back from the Director of Corporate Services, no, it's not feasible right now.
I'm happy with
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Tapanos.
Has such an analysis not been done in the preparation of this report and the previous report about fossil fuel divestment?
I can move to the Director. I'd say I presume it has been, but that what Councillor Bolton is seeking is a regular update to that analysis as banking practices might change.
Yes, yeah, that's right. It's not a static analysis.
Does that answer to your question, or do you want me to?
Sure, I just don't want to have officers repeat work that's already been done. Perhaps if we get an indication from the banking sector that things have changed with particular banks who can offer the services we require, we can look at it at that stage. I just don't want ongoing analysis and investigation and research work whilst there is no change or work that's already been repeated to be repeated once more. I just think we need to be very careful, particularly in a rate-capped environment, how the resources, our human resources and our staff are actually utilised. And sometimes we do require so many reports and analysis, and I just feel we probably might be adding more of a burden than what it's worth. If we get an indication from the banking sector or some banks that they've changed their policies, then perhaps that would be an appropriate time to actually raise this. But I just don't think that we should be spending a lot more resources doing work that's already been done before.
Sure. The Director want to respond to that briefly?
Through the Mayor. One of the key points about a positive screening approach is that we engage the financial institutions that we currently use to find out what their practices are and to encourage them to move to the positions we would prefer. So while we recognise that Moreland City Council on its own is not going to change a major bank, it also gives us the information to make the assessment. So they will be telling us whether they have moved. If they don't tell us anything, that tells us something in itself. So we wouldn't expect that the analysis would take significant major resourcing, and the analysis that was done back earlier this year when we started this process showed that the financial institution market is not ready to provide all the services from fossil fuel free institutions, but we've got mechanisms under our divestment strategy to monitor that over future years.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on Councillor Bolton's amendment before we move to voting on it? Close the debate? Yes, Councillor Bolton.
Unless someone else wants to say something.
I don't think there's anything further. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tapanos is now indicating that he wishes to speak again.
No. I said no one's spoken against it.
Oh, that's a very relevant point. Councillor Bolton, as nobody has spoken against the amendment, there is no right to close the debate.
Well,
it's
I'd
only
like to reply to the question that Councillor Tapanos raised.
I think Councillor Tapanos's question has been sufficiently answered, and that we all feel that we've received enough information.
I think there is a little bit more information that needs to be.
I choose to disagree, and I think that the question has been answered by a Director and other councillors, and that we're comfortable now moving to voting on the item. I'll now put the matter to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment?
Unanimous.
All those against? I declare that carried.
Unanimous, wasn't it?
It was unanimous.
Can we have it listed as unanimous?
Certainly. We will list the amendment as unanimous. Well, is it still unanimous given that Councillor Yildiz did not vote?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
All right. Just checking. We'll now return to debating the full motion, which includes the amendment now. Is there any discussion on the full motion? Yes, Councillor Ratnam, you wish to close? Yeah.
Sure, happy to close, or if other people want to speak as well. Look, I just want to commend this strategy to council and the community. Somebody asked us yesterday, tell us a little bit about the highlights of being a councillor or being on council, and I'd have to name this as one of the highlights. In terms of being able to be part of a group of councillors and the community to initiate discussion about divestment, fossil fuel divestment, and carrying it through to the point that we've actually got a strategy that council is going now to implement. I know there was some nervousness at the beginning, given that there's not many councils that have done this across the country, let alone the world. Once again, Moreland wasn't afraid to be leaders in this space. We've taken a measured approach to consult the community, do our due diligence, and look at the options that are available that minimise our risk, yet help us push forward to really signal to the fossil fuel industry that they're going out of business. As Councillor Bolton mentioned, we have a climate crisis globally, and is incumbent on every level of government to do as much as they possibly can to combat that. And divesting from fossil fuels is such a significant part of that, because that industry is responsible for such a rate of fossil fuel emissions and carbon emissions. While council doesn't have direct investment, for example, in mining companies, it does indirectly invest in its financial institutions that it supports by securing their business and keeping them in ongoing business. And the work that we've done with our banking services tender has really signalled that we want to see institutions come to us, and that we will favour those institutions that can show us that they have a good environment sustainability profile. And the divestment strategy outlines the measures that we can take in the future to ensure that we are giving incentives to those organisations that show us that they have a good environmental footprint in terms of securing our business. I'd like particularly to thank all the community participants who are community members who were involved in this campaign, particularly Michael Stanley from 350.org and all the rest of his peers at 350.org and Climate Action Moreland particularly, who really championed this change and helped us get to this point. So it is a very proud moment, and I commend this strategy to council.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. We'll now vote on the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We'll now move to DCS 8315, proposed acquisition of land, parcel B, number 1, Hopeton Avenue. Somebody to move, please. Move Councillor Tapanos. Somebody to second? Seconded Councillor Yildiz.
A question to council.
I'll allow Councillor Tapanos or Yildiz to speak first, and I'll take the question. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. It is not every day that we get the opportunity to purchase some open space, and it's quite important when we do get that opportunity, we do take it up, particularly when it is open space that the community already is enjoying and is actually open. So it's not the creation of new space, it's just space that is there but is not in council's ownership. And many times this space belongs to other government departments, and as they go through their reviews, they may actually dispose of it by public sale or so forth. So it puts that public space in jeopardy. So I guess it's an opportunity where they've approached us, and together we've worked towards potentially acquiring one of the parcels that is so strategic because it is adjacent to the Moonee Ponds Creek and would add to the amenity of the area over there. Unfortunately, I am recommending that we only purchase parcel B, not parcel A, as that is significantly more expensive and it will not add the same kind of amenity, will have the same kind of amenity impact and requirement as parcel B is. So the recommendation is to purchase and proceed with the purchase of parcel B.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Yildiz? No? Councillor Thompson, you had a question.
It's been answered, thank you.
Oh, excellent. That's good to hear. Any debate on this item? No. If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? Declare that carried. DCS 8415, proposed acquisition of land at number 4 and 10 Leonard Street in Fawkner. It's moved by Councillor Bolton. Somebody to second? Seconded Councillor Lenka Thompson. Councillor Bolton, did you wish to speak to this?
No, I'll be right.
No? Councillor Lenka Thompson?
Yeah, just quickly that these two lots of land that we're proposed to purchase sort of makes up a broader context of some open space that's in Fawkner, and protecting some native grassland. So, and I believe the lots 6 and 8 are also owned by council, so we're just broadening out that open space for us. So it's a great purchase, and commend to the council for jumping on board with this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is there any debate on this item? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DCS 8515, sale of encroached land adjoining 276 Barclay Street, Brunswick, or the Black Street car park. Something to move? Move, Councillor Tapanos.
I'm happy to move the recommendation as listed with a small amendment, and that is that point 4 be replaced with allocate the proceeds of the sale, excluding reimbursement costs, to a car parking project in Brunswick in consultation with the Sydney Road Brunswick Association. If I have a second, I'll speak to...
Is there a seconder to this? Yes, seconded Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Tapanos.
Well, firstly, I must start by actually thanking the officers for all the hard work that's gone into negotiating this outcome. And I know some councillors did have some concerns in regards to the sale of that wall and how that will impact the overall site, but I'm glad that work has been resolved, and it looks like it is a solution that is both pleasing to the adjoining residents who will be purchasing that property, and also council, and would also enable council to actually proceed now with determining what it wants to do if the Black Street car park can actually develop a worthwhile project on that site. I guess people would be really interested to see the issue about the allocation of funds, but I do think after reading the submission of the traders that they are right in the sense that they have contributed, and we do have a moral obligation to ensure that that money that is generated from the sale of this property is spent according to the purpose in which that original property was purchased, and that was to provide car parking facilities. And I do think that is fair and only right that we do also consult with them at the point in time for any particular project that those funds do go towards. And I say this by also acknowledging that, of course, public housing is and affordable housing is a big priority for this council, and we've created a reserve and we have contributed rates money, and we will be continuing to contribute. But in this case, I do believe that the money that's been generated from this sale does need to go to a car parking project, and there are many of them. A lot of our car parks could do with improvements. We do have a lot of future plans, particularly around the airspace, particularly around reconfiguring some of the car parks, providing some larger car parks with better facilities. So I do think there are projects that this small sum of money can go towards, and it might actually be a small sum that could go towards a bigger project. So this could be a starting sort of contribution. So I do think there are projects there, and that's the worthwhile approach with that cash. So those are the two issues I wanted to raise, and I hope councillors would support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor, no?
But an amendment.
Amendment. Okay, I'll take the amendment from Councillor Bolton.
Okay, my amendment is to replace point 4.
Well, I think that's foreshadowing. So I think what you're doing is actually foreshadowing that if the motion is...
amending the motion. No, it's an amendment.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll take it as an amendment.
Allocate the proceeds of the sale, excluding reimbursed costs, to the housing reserve, and if I get a second, I'll speak to it.
Okay, it's seconded by Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Bolton.
Well, council has passed a range of motions in the past about trying to find a way of providing more affordable housing in Moreland. So far there's probably not a huge amount to be seen for it. There are some projects, but really the housing reserve as it is has been dribbling away for a number of years. There's actually not that much money left in the housing reserve now in terms of doing any kind of serious projects. There have been a number of resolutions passed through council about using the air rights above council car parks to build the housing reserve, so we can try and take some genuine measurable steps forward in terms of providing or facilitating affordable housing. Do we really want Moreland to just become, and Brunswick in particular, a city of millionaires? Do we only want to have millionaires living in Moreland, and especially in the south of Moreland in Brunswick? Do we really want that for Moreland? I think that would be totally change the whole character of Moreland and of Brunswick in particular. I mean, it's already a very gentrified area, but we've got an absolute housing crisis as well as a climate crisis in Australia. And this is just a small step, because obviously councils are limited in what they can do, but this is a small step but important step to try and take some measures around affordable housing. So, I think in my book that takes a precedence over the car parks, because we need to preserve some housing in Moreland which people can afford to live in.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Ratnam.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I think you covered a lot of the issues and concerns about the motion that Councillor Tapanos has put on the table, and I support your amendment to return to the original proposal. I was very concerned when this report originally came to us in terms of the sale of this parcel of land, given that it was essentially council land. I agree that in terms of the relationship to the traders, the special rates charge scheme that was used to fund the purchase of these car parks many years ago, there is an intimate relationship between the traders and council in terms of these car parks and their future use, and we'll be in constant negotiation with traders around that. However, it is council-owned land, and I was very, very concerned that we were selling even if it was a tiny sliver of it, given the importance of the Black Street car park to our social and affordable housing projects. That's not taking away the car parking, but it's finding ways of utilising that land where we can get good social and affordable housing outcomes as well as preserving the car park. So we're trying to think laterally and think about these populations that need our support in the community. So that's the connection between those two. And given that concern, I was somewhat consoled that the funds from the sale of that even tiny strip of land was now going to the housing reserve, given the connection between now car parking, the car parks, council-owned car parks, and our social and affordable housing goals. And they are going to be linked in future as we work through the airspace feasibility study and implications and implementation of it as well. In terms of, so I think they do hang together. I know there was some concern about that, but I think we do have to talk about this in relation to car parking because now they are interlinked. Just in response to Councillor Tapanos's notion that we have a moral obligation to reinvest this money back into car parking, I'd actually say that the real moral obligation is, as Councillor Bolton put it, to ensure that our community, and particularly people who are in housing affordability crisis, have adequate housing options going into the future. And we just heard at a briefing a couple of days ago in terms of land trust proposals that we've seen a reduction in rental properties that are affordable to people, particularly on income support, a reduction from 25% of those rental properties that were affordable to people on income support down to just 2% currently. We have a moral obligation to do something about this, and that's what motions like this help us to do. So I would really urge Council to support Councillor Bolton's amendment to reinstate the wording as originally proposed in the report.
Okay, thank you. Is there a speaker against the amendment? No? Oh, yes, well, up you go. Councillor Tapanos.
Okay, thank you. Look, I think it's always very interesting when people attempt to play one public good off another, and unfortunately, this is sort of what is occurring in this debate. There is no doubt that we do have a crisis in public housing and affordable housing, and this council is acting, and I'm very supportive of all the actions it has taken and the strategies it has in creating the trust fund and the land fund and investing money and placing council rates money into the project. But there are many projects that need to occur, and that is something that we need to consider more broadly across the municipality. And of course, we need to consider the issue of affordable housing as we do through our strategic work that we do as far as planning provisions and so forth as well. But that's not really what this issue is about. This is about how you spend money that is actually money that's been collected for a particular purpose and contributed to by a particular group of people, our traders, over many years through a special levy to build that car park. So people have said, we want to charge a levy, they've paid a levy for car parking. So now you're saying we're going to take the profits of that and put it into public housing. So look, public housing, yes, it is urgent, it is a big priority. We have a rates base, we have a whole bunch of strategies which we should be following, and we can do many things. But we need to do it not with well, not with parcels of land or money, but it's already tied up into other areas. So I really question even the legality of a decision, because when people have contributed through a levy for a particular purpose, even if it might be 10 or 20 years later, which this is the case, I think 20 odd years later, it is still opposite to the purpose which they have contributed. So it's unfair. It's like you're shortchanging the traders. You've taken money for Objective A to invest in car park. Now you're selling that and you're putting it into another good cause. A good cause nonetheless, but it's not what the money was intended for. So I don't think it's the right approach. I think we should put it in car parking projects, and we can find the money and we can set the policies to address the affording housability crisis in our city. And we will do that.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Speaker in favour of the amendment. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
So I'm speaking in favour of Councillor Bolton's amendment about allocating the funds back to the housing reserve.
Yes.
As I concur with everything that Councillor Bolton and Councillor Ratnam have said about the moral obligation that Council has to some of our most vulnerable residents in Moreland. And I guess just speaking to it as well, additionally, looking at diversity of income, like if we're wanting to find other areas, like especially in a rate-capped environment, we need to be flexible and innovative about how we're going to fund future projects especially about affordable housing, because I guess it's one of those things that many people see that is not, I guess, core business of council. So when we've got an opportunity like this, it's certainly a good option to move it into a housing fund that secures it for our most vulnerable residents for the future. And I guess in terms of car parking, there are a number of car parks in Brunswick that are grossly underutilised. We've had reports in the past about how underutilised those car parks are. And if it's a matter of signage and showing the people where to allocate where those car parks are, that they're there and available, then that can definitely come out of the rates-based system. I don't see a problem with that at all. And there is, we have a car parking strategy that delivers on that.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is there a further speaker against the amendment?
I actually am going to. And I find myself in a very unusual position because I often agree with Councillor Bolton on especially these sorts of issues. But I do, in this particular case, agree with Councillor Tapanos in regard to if we have been levying money from a certain group of people, then we need to actually use that money to address the concerns that those people were actually, putting their money toward. I'm more than happy, though, to look at other ways that we can put significant amounts into social housing, because I do actually support that and think that we have a real moral obligation towards that. But I do think in this particular instance, I do actually support Councillor Tapanos, Lambros, sorry. And it's unfortunate because it is about a very good, I do agree that it's a great cause to be looking at social housing, but in this case I think that money needs to go to where we said it would go.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Is there any further debate before I allow Councillor Bolton? Yes, Councillor Tapanos.
I speak in favour of the motion. I think Councillor Tapanos would be correct if the moment we collected the revenue, etc., we then changed our minds and decided we're going to spend it differently. The revenue was collected in 1971. They've had use of that car park and they continue to have use of it. We're not taking away one car parking space with this. It's not like we've said, okay, that's for a car park, and suddenly we're saying, oh no, we'll take away that car park the day after we collect it. The other thing is too, these special charge schemes, the council bought the land and then yes, levied the traders to provide the car parking, but it doesn't mean that after a period of time council can decide to change the use of that. Right? Council does remain. The special charge schemes are quite clear that they're used for a certain purpose, but as long as the intention is honourable at that point, that's fine. There's no problem in changing your view after a period of time. I don't want to get in to the thinking that we can't change our decisions at some point or a use for something after a long period of time. I think that's a bad precedent. I also think, we could say, okay, we have the Sydney Road Street Party. Other municipalities have parties like that and the traders contribute towards those sort of things. In this case, traders don't contribute to that. It's the entire council that contributes. Same with the Brunswick Music Festival. Port Fairy traders pay levy towards running the Port Fairy Music Festival. We don't charge our traders that. We carry the burden ourselves. You know, there's a whole range of things that this council provides that other councils don't provide. It doesn't mean that we can't change our mind and decide that at some point the car park levy has served its purpose and we have another use.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Any further debate on this item? No, I'll allow Councillor Bolton to close the debate.
Thank you. Well, firstly, one of my, and thank you, Councillor Kavanagh, for explaining a little bit about how this levy scheme has worked. But at the moment in Moreland, including in Brunswick, where there is a lot of traffic congestion, a lot of the car parks are not full. People don't know they're there because of the lack of signage. A lot of people driving up Sydney Road think that, the only parks available are the ones on Sydney Road because, the signage actually isn't very visible. If we vote down this amendment, I think actually it is bye-bye housing reserve because at the moment the council has not identified any other source of money within our budget which can be allocated to affordable housing. So if we vote down this amendment, it will be bye-bye housing reserve because the housing reserve is going down, down, down. And it's... and the way in which the council's used that housing reserve, has been, for legitimate purposes around housing projects, but it is whittling away. It is whittling away, and the council to this point has not come up with any alternative. And I think basically, if we vote down this source of revenue, then basically it means we're basically saying that we aim to turn Brunswick into a 100% millionaire's paradise, and really anyone who, is on low income, will not be eligible to live in that area. That's the Black Street car park is in the Brunswick area, but also even much further north, even in Fawkner, which was previously a cheaper area, people are being forced out of Fawkner because they can't afford to live in Fawkner as well. So even at the top of the municipality, which is seen as a lower socioeconomic area, people are being forced out of Glenroy and Hadfield and Fawkner because the housing is just absolutely astronomical. And when I got elected to council, I knew of a family that was living in the Fawkner Cemetery because they had nowhere else to live. But they were living there rather than moving elsewhere so that they could continue to send their kids to school. So, because those are things that confront people who don't have housing. So I certainly hope this amendment gets voted up.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. We'll now vote on the amendment proposed by Councillor Bolton, which puts the proceeds to the housing reserve. All those in favour? All those against?
Could I call for a division?
Yeah. So all of those who voted in favour of Councillor Bolton's amendment, please raise your hands and have it recorded.
Good one, Councillor Gillies.
I actually think the original...
I know.
I'll allow you to change it now. I'll allow you to change it now the division has been called, if you wish to. It doesn't change the outcome of the vote.
No, it doesn't, but...
Up to you. They can record whichever outcome you prefer.
It doesn't matter. I'm happy either way.
Okay. All those against?
I'm going to go with you guys because they're doing it however way they like. So,
You've voted twice.
So apologies.
She voted twice.
Councillor Gillies is elected to be represented as against.